When the mist rolls in, the sea reveals its darkest secret. Those who see the phantom ship are never the same again. Phantom Ship in the Strait, submitted by Iskandar Shah. I'm not asking you to believe me. Honestly, after everything I've seen, I wouldn't believe me either. But what happened out there in the Strait, it's real. At least, it was real for me. You can take this story and laugh it off, or you can let it sit in the back of your mind like a bad memory. Either way, I'm telling it the way it happened. We were just three men, fishermen who had been working the waters off the coast of Malaysia for years. We knew the seas well, every current, every shift of the tide. The ocean was our home, and we respected it. But that night, something changed. It started as just another fishing trip. The weather was fine, the sea calm. We cast our nets as usual, chatting about the day's catch, planning to return to shore before sunset. But then, out of nowhere, a thick fog rolled in, dense and unnatural. It wasn't the kind of mist you see at dawn or after a rainstorm. This was different. It swallowed everything around us, thick as soup, cutting off the sun and cloaking the sea in silence. At first, we thought it was just the weather playing tricks. We'd been caught in mist before, but this was something else. The temperature dropped sharply, and the wind died. All we could hear was the water lapping against the sides of our boat and the soft creak of the wood underfoot. Then we saw it. Out of the fog, a ship appeared. It was old, ancient even, its sails torn and ragged, hanging limply from the masts. The ship itself was massive, much bigger than any fishing vessel we'd ever seen. It looked like it belonged to another time, from centuries past. We stared at it, stunned, unable to move or speak. The ship glided silently through the mist, its hull barely making a sound as it cut through the water. There were no lights, no signs of life on board. But the longer we watched, the more we felt it, an overwhelming sense of dread, like the air had been sucked out of our lungs. It was as if the ship wasn't just there, it was watching us. One of my mates, Azar, muttered under his breath, "That's the ghost ship. My grandfather used to tell stories about it." I laughed it off. "Come on, Azar, don't start with the superstitions." But Azar's face was pale, his eyes wide. "I'm serious," he whispered. "The phantom ship, it's cursed. They say it only appears in the mist, and anyone who sees it." He didn't finish his sentence, but I knew what he meant. There were plenty of stories about ships disappearing in these waters, and some people believed that those who got too close to the phantom ship never returned. I didn't believe it, not really, but the fear in Azar's voice made me uneasy. Still, curiosity got the better of us. We were sailors after all. We'd spent our lives on the water, and we weren't about to be scared off by some ghost story. So we decided to get closer. Bad idea. As we approached the ship, the mist seemed to grow thicker, clinging to our boat like it didn't want to let us go. The closer we got, the more we could make out the details of the ship. The tattered sails, the cracked wood, the strange symbols carved into the hull. They weren't like anything we'd seen before, definitely not Malay, and not from any other culture we knew. Azar's hands shook as he steered us closer. "I don't like this," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the water. "We shouldn't be here." I was about to tell him to turn back when I noticed something moving on the deck of the ship. At first, I thought it was just the fog playing tricks on my eyes, but then I saw it again, figures, shadowy and indistinct, gliding across the deck. "There's someone up there," I said, my voice shaking. "I swear I saw someone." Azar glanced at me, his face pale. "We need to go now." But it was too late. The ship loomed above us, its towering masts disappearing into the mist. And then, without warning, the wind picked up. It wasn't a natural wind. It came out of nowhere, howling through the sails and whipping the sea into a frenzy. Our boat rocked violently, and I had to grab onto the side to keep from being thrown overboard. That's when we heard it, the creaking of the ship, louder now, as if it was alive. The figures on the deck moved faster, more erratic, like they were looking for something, or someone. Azar panicked. He turned the boat around, his hands trembling on the wheel. "We need to get out of here," he shouted over the roar of the wind. But the ship followed us. It moved with an unnatural speed, gliding through the water like it was weightless. the mist swirling around it like a living thing. No matter how fast we went, it stayed right behind us, looming closer and closer. I glanced back, my heart pounding in my chest, and that's when I saw it. A face. One of the figures on the ship had turned toward us, its hollow eyes locking onto mine. It was pale, almost translucent, its skin stretched tight over its bones. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out. But I knew what it was trying to say. Leave. We thought we were safe when we reached the shore that night. But that sense of safety was short-lived. That first night back on land, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. The ship emerging from the mist, the hollow eyes staring back at me. The room felt too quiet, too still, and my mind wouldn't stop replaying what had happened. The next morning, I met Azar and Hisham at the docks. We didn't say much, but I could see the same unease in their faces. The village was small, and word had already spread that we'd returned early from our trip. The other fishermen gave us curious looks, but no one asked questions. Maybe they knew better. We decided not to go back out to sea for a few days. We told ourselves it was just a break, that we needed time to rest, but deep down, we all knew the truth. None of us wanted to risk seeing that ship again. But then the dreams started. It was Hisham who mentioned it first. We were sitting at the local warung having coffee when he leaned in close, his voice barely a whisper. "Have you been dreaming about it?" he asked, his eyes darting around like he was afraid someone might overhear. Azar and I exchanged a glance. Neither of us had said anything about the dreams, but the look on Hisham's face told me we weren't the only ones. "They're not dreams," Hisham said, his voice shaking. "It's something else. Every night I see it. The ship, the figures, and then I'm back on the boat, out in the mist." Azar nodded slowly. "Same here." I didn't want to admit it, but I'd been having the same dreams. Every night, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, the sound of the creaking ship still ringing in my ears. In the dreams, the ship was always closer, the figures on the deck more distinct, more alive. "They're calling to us," Hisham said. "They want us to come back." I tried to push the dreams out of my mind, but they only grew worse. It was like the ship had left a mark on me, on all of us. Even when I was awake, I could feel it. The weight of the ship's presence lingering in the back of my mind, always there, just beyond reach. A few days later, something strange happened. Azar didn't show up at the docks. We asked around, but no one had seen him. His boat was still tied up, untouched, and his house was locked from the inside. When we finally broke the door down, we found him sitting by the window, staring out at the sea. "Azar," I called, but he didn't respond. He just kept staring, his eyes wide and unblinking. Hisham shook him by the shoulders, but it was like he wasn't even there, like his mind was somewhere else. And then slowly he turned to look at us. His face was pale, and there was something off about his eyes, something vacant. "I saw it again," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's out there, waiting." That night, I dreamed again. This time, the ship wasn't just in the distance. It was right there, looming over me. The figures on the deck moved with purpose now, their hollow eyes fixed on me, their mouths open in silent screams. And then, just as I thought they were going to pull me onto the ship, I woke up, gasping for breath, drenched in sweat. But something was different. I could hear it, the sound of waves, faint but unmistakable, as if I were standing at the shore. But I wasn't at the shore. I was in my bed, miles away from the sea. I sat up, my heart racing, and listened. The sound was coming from outside. I crept to the window, my hands shaking as I pulled back the curtain. And there, through the darkness, I saw it. The ship. It was out there, on the horizon, shrouded in mist. It shouldn't have been possible. I was too far inland to see the sea, but there it was, as real as it had been that night on the water. The figures on the deck moved slowly, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. I wanted to look away, to shut the curtain and pretend it wasn't there, but I couldn't. I was frozen, unable to tear my eyes away from the ship. And then, just as I thought it would vanish back into the mist, one of the figures raised its hand and pointed directly at me. The next day I went back to the docks, determined to find Hisham. But when I got there, his boat was gone. The other fishermen said he'd gone out early that morning, alone, heading toward the open sea. No one had seen him since. I knew what had happened. The ship had called to him, just like it had called to Azar. And now it was calling to me. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The dreams are getting worse, and the ship, it's closer now. Every night it appears on the horizon, and every night the figures on the deck watch me, waiting. I can feel it pulling me, dragging me back to the sea. I don't know what it wants, but I know one thing. Once you've seen the phantom ship, you can never escape it. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know. Whether you believe me or not is up to you. But if you ever find yourself out on the strait and the mist starts to roll in, turn back or don't. It's up to you. But if you see the ship, just know that it's already too late.